sorry it took me so long to get back to this. The having a cold wiped out my brain for a while. Anyway, I don't know if this is going to help at all, but here we go. This is Audacity. This is in the Audacity interface. What I'm doing is I'm going to show you about footsteps. How silly of me. That's not what I just copied, you silly machine. Obviously, my brain is still a little bit wonky from having a cold. These are footsteps. Now, much of the time, when you see footsteps, they're like this. Now, what I was talking about as an issue would be if you had a stereo track and if the footsteps alternated back and forth between the stereo track, because see, I went through some of my stuff and I don't have one like that right now because I've cleaned them all up and fixed them all. Usually for me, I make sure all of my effects are in mono, because then as I move them through a stereo soundscape, they become stereo, but they're not in stereo moving. And the reason for that is if I take this stereo track and I split it to stereo, one side is left and one side is right. Now, if this was a messed up track, every other footstep would be maybe not all the way only on one side or the other, but well over to one side. So if I blank out every other step like this, this would simulate how it is. And I've had tracks like this. I just have cleaned them up and fixed them so I don't have them currently because they're pretty useless. And this is what I talked about in regard to that video. And then I make it stereo again. You see that it still has this. And if you watch, let's see, do I have a stereo? Yeah. If you watch up here, this is the speaker bar. You'll see it alternates from one side to the other. And what you're hearing is mostly in one ear or the other. Or in this case, actually, let's see. When I split the stereo track, it is 100% one side or the other. So this literally is in one ear or the other. If it was a little bit less, I'll change it from 100 to 90, so it'll be a little bit in each ear. No sound in a game or anything should be 100% on one side unless you're making a point, because for people with typical hearing, a sound will always travel around your head and come in both ears, unless one of your ears is covered up for some reason. And therefore, something in just one ear should be something outstandingly unusual. So I'm going to make that a stereo track. Now if you watch this, you'll see there'll be a little bit on both sides, but it's still registering one ear then the other. Now the problem with this is if I take this track and I want to move it from across the soundscape, if I say, oh, I want this to be over to the right, you can watch this and you'll see that these left-hand footsteps are still going to be in the left track, primarily, even though I said I want the sound to be on the right, because they've moved as far right within the left-hand side as they can. And this is one of the reasons why I always turn sound effects into mono. If I mute this one now so that it's not going to register, and I paste a new copy, if I want to move this through the soundscape, nobody listens to their feet on one side and then the other. No matter what, you're hearing it pretty much the same because they're coming from down below up to both your ears. So to move this, and again, I don't know how effective this will be, I'm going to copy it. The simplest way to move sound through a soundscape is to fade it out on one side and fade it in on the other. So if I wanted the feet to move from left to right, I would do this. And now we watch this here. And you'll see how they go from being primarily on the left to slowly being more on the right. And it sounds stereo, even though individual tracks are mono. I hope that makes sense. I can write out some of this for you if you need me to, but I wanted to make sure that I followed through because I did promise I would say something about this. I hope that helps.